There's this subsection of social psychology called social identity theory. And it's vitally important to everyone's everyday life. And it's been basically put on blast, injected with steroids in the last 20 years, the last 10 in particular, with the growth of the internet, social media, social groups online. And it is basically the formation of tribalism. And I mean, it's nothing new. This is something that humans and primates have been doing for millennia, like thousands of years. It's part of evolution. It gives you a group. In fact, it creates not just being in a group, but it creates out groups. And a guy named Tajfel did a study on this about 50 or 60 years ago that really simplistically outlined how this works. And basically, it created what's called the minimal group paradigm, which in essence is, for the study, how can we create a group with the absolute minimum separation of group A versus group B? You could flip a coin, you could do anything. So in this case, they showed a series of group of dots on a wall, on a screen, and asked the people in the study to estimate how many dots they thought there were, and almost irrespective of their answer, the professor or the experimenter would put them into groups of overestimators and underestimators. And that group, later on, that grouping, people were asked to delegate some sort of tokenomics, money, value to either their in-group, which they were now part of, or the out-group, which they were not part of. And as you would expect, they tend to favor their groups. And there was derogation towards the other group. So not only would they favor and give more coins to their own group, they would sacrifice themselves and give themselves less if it meant keeping the out group down, keeping them below them. So it's almost an ego of the self put into a group setting. And this happens, the reason I bring this up is, I'm thinking about stuff like this sometimes when I'm painting, even though I have the structure of what I want to do, I have these thoughts in my head. And a lot of it has to do with contrast, right? This self-esteem, I have it because I have contrast of I'm part of this group and I'm opposed to that. And visually here, dark and light, it creates this grouping, right? Your eyes can see one right away. They see the yellow and green as a group, the purple and blue as another group, right? You separate these things. But we're seeing this tribalism like never before, because it's a click away to be connected to millions of people, and people tend to stay in their group. Oh, hi, Phoenix. This is my buddy who watches me paint sometimes, Phoenix. He's staring. This painting is called Quit Staring, which is just a pun on staring, but has to do with, as I was building it, the idea of not just the staircase, but staring is like people who are judging, evaluating, making assumptions on others constantly, right? I mean, it's all the time that we're doing this, but we tend to think that this natural thing that we're either aware of or not, subconscious or conscious, that we're correct, but the truth is our emotional assumptions, or even if they're based on logic, are way more often wrong than correct. And it really behooves you as a human being to start pay attention to that, right? to consider that maybe you're not always correct, or your group isn't always the right side of logic, truth, kindness, morality, everything that you think you might be part of. And you see this online, especially, with the tribal nature of, say, politics or civil unrest. I mean, you see it in other ways too, like, arbitrarily cheering for a sports team, or, you have your group of people from the country that you were born in, where you live in, versus, other people. It's the color of your skin, the language you speak, all these things that we do to separate. But, online, these echo chambers, it's actually a lot of this human divide is caused on purpose. This sort of divide and conquer. It's very easy to do when you control how people get this information via the television, the media, the internet, but also just like always listening to the same people on your side, an echo chamber of information. It pumps up people's self-esteem, so they're part of a group, and it makes them feel better. But when you're only getting that side, you neglect a part of human character and human development and growth, where you can step back and actually say, I want to actually listen to the other person, and maybe more importantly, consider that you yourself might be wrong, or the people feeding you information all the time might be completely, void of maybe empathy or logic, or even just listening. And it's gotten to the point where that's really accelerated, right? So there have been so many studies on this, even to the chemical level. Like oxytocin is, something that we get naturally, but also you could be exposed to it via an external source. But like mothers and babies have an oxytocin boost when that they're connecting, and so people get that naturally when they're the tires are pumped from people agreeing with them on the internet, and vice versa. When somebody disagrees with you, how that rage from some avatar on the other side of the world is saying something that you don't like, you get some adrenaline, you need to fight back, all this. And then even more sinister in a way is the fact that you ever considering the other side, like genuinely listening, can have you excommunicated from the tribe that you supposedly should stay completely loyal to, which is crazy, because that means they're going to shun you just for listening to the opposing view, and that's a problem. So, psychology is very good at identifying behaviors that are often sometimes negative like this, but there's ways, that people can improve. Like it's not all negative. So, for example, like there's cross-cutting and group identity, right? Like you can be part of, say, one ethnicity or political background, but you also have friends who are the opposite of that, but you guys both cheer for the same soccer team or something, right? So you have an opportunity there to get to know, befriend, involve yourself with people who align with you in some ways, but maybe not in others, but that gives you a chance to grow, right? People need to do that at the same time as have honest self-observation that you might be wrong with your assumptions and everything. And so the reason that I'm saying this as I'm painting this, and there's an eye here, there's this sort of roller coaster, these staircases, there's this man here hanging, reaching out. Is he hanging to climb up, or is he reaching down to the eye to connect? And as I was thinking about that with the eye, humans are the only primates that have a white sort of sclera in the eye. And this is something that it would be like where the staircase is in this painting. So you're getting the contrast of the sort of the whole eyeball and this white sort of sclera around it. And this has a huge evolutionary aspects of how we judge and view other people's behaviors and facial expressions. And you see like other primates, they don't have this. And so we're unique in the sense that, we have we have language, we have all these other things, and we have to learn that a lot of the times when we fall into these sort of strict, polarizing sides, it's important to maybe step back from that once in a while and like be like, wait, am I just another schmo trapped in this, ever evolving, spinning world of humans fighting each other for reasons that they may think they're morally or more virtuous than someone else, but in fact they're just doing exactly the same as the other side. And so like as I'm painting this, I'm thinking of these things and trying to show like complexity, this roller coaster moving around that eyeball. It's like that eye that I was talking about. It becomes like sort of like the iris to the pupil, and it's moving around, and these rungs that some of them are going, in sort of incorrect physical ways, like an illusion, which is a whole nother thing I want to talk about from psychology, but in another video. But it's like, we can be manipulated, but we can also use the same observations and methods of study and internalizing, like being truthful with ourselves. But that takes an effort, right? It's not just about, I'm going to start being truthful with myself. It's actually, an outward absorption, like an observation, but it's an inward practice of being more self-aware of, hey, was I just manipulated by this commercial on TV, this meme that I read, this person's comment, and to be more like generalizing on that is like media that comes to us from corporations, right? That is very deliberate. So when you're subjected to these things, whether on purpose or not, or passively or not, I would suggest like talk to your inner self about these things and say, am I being fooled? Like, is this swaying me on purpose? Am I being manipulated? And whether that's a yes or no answer, the practice of doing it is what I really wanted to sort of convey in this video. That being said, thanks for watching, and maybe subscribe, like if you want, share it. Thank you very much.